Welcome everybody, and I hope everyone is safe. And this particular call is not exactly a call. This particular session is for just discussing about things that we are doing in Angular, and what all Angular provides us. We can discuss through all of those things, and yeah, let's just get started with it. So the first thing I guess that we can start is the bundle size, I guess, and that is, I guess, the most of the the major part of the community talks about this, because while choosing between various technologies that we use to build web apps and those, this is the most important thing, I guess, they focus upon. Like when we ship our build, what's the bundle size, how soon the app can load the first time. So I guess we can kickstart with this thing in what we have in Angular, and what all Angular provides us out of the box. Yeah, so anyone would like to, add points to this?
So
Maybe
so let's first set the ground, like bundle size. Like what is the best bundle size an app can have?
KBs, I guess.
Yeah, the best bundle size would be 0 kbs, right? So that it
Yeah,
loads like instantly.
exactly.
But what is the acceptable bundle size in today's internet speed, right? Like everybody has got a good connection, like 4G and all those things. So what is a good page size, or the entire JS bundle size? What a good say, or an average dashboard app or things like that can have?
Hello, Sanket.
Yeah, Vinod.
So actually, regarding the bundle size, so that is very specific depending upon the number of files and everything. So obviously that's a very important thing. But generally, a bundle size is generally compared in the form of the entire library, that the constituent libraries. The node modules and everything. So, for example, if you were to compare, React sits at around 97.5 KB with React DOM just. So this is not including the React router or anything, whereas Angular is around 103 KB estimated. So that is, because Angular team has recently started focusing on this very much, that the bundle size needs to be reduced. Like during Angular 5, it used to be around almost 700 KB. So they
Mhm.
have reduced it by the time to Angular 9 to 100 to make it more competitive, with the other products in the market.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
that's why. So when you have to compare, so Angular is generally compared, the bundle size is always looked at Angular along with the RX library, because that's a very important constituent whenever you're creating large scale applications. With React, it is generally React, React Router, and React DOM are generally the standards looking to. Redux is added later on if you need to go anything greater than a dashboard app. So that's why.
Right, makes sense. Okay.
So I
So
guess
so what is it like? Angular plus RX? What's the size?
Angular plus RX is around 103 KB
Okay.
in Angular 9.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, all
well,
right.
Angular. If we talk about specific versions, I guess Angular line 9 is the way to go, and it is the most optimized out of all, because of a lot of things that they've added lately. Even the latest compilation engine they have, I guess, since Angular 2 has launched. I guess they have changed the compilation engine 3 to 4 times, and hardly anyone noticed that, because there was not lot of changes in that. But in Angular 9 they have just made the IV engine as the default to go. You cannot really choose. In Angular 8 you could choose to use the IV version, because it was like a beta kind of thing. But with Angular 9 they have made it like a default compilation engine, and that has hugely impacted all of these things, be it like the load size, be it the bundle size, be it the change direction that is happening. A lot of things, I guess. We will talk about IV more in this call later.
Okay.
uh, but yeah, I guess that is, if we talk about Angular 9, then it is like the highly optimized thing that we have. And
Right.
obviously it has to compare with the best out there, which is React. But I mean, I would say let's not let's not make it Angular versus React right now. And obviously we can have comparisons with that.
Yeah, right. So I think where we started about the bundle size, like number of files is definitely one criteria, like how the bundle size changes. But if we have correct lazy loading strategies, uh,
Exactly.
that works really well. So we need to, as a developer, we always need to focus on what's it's called as time to first paint and time to interactivity. These two things, if we focus on, focus on those two areas, and just the first bundle size so that users can actually interact with the page, and lazy load the modules as we go. If we take care of
Exactly.
these things, then I think it should be just fine. Okay, out of curiosity, can you guys? Okay, this is just a trivia. I'm very sure like all of you must have played Super Mario,
Yes.
right? Okay, any guess what was the size of Super Mario in KBs?
It was, I think, around 5 to 6 KB, I think, because Doom was one of the heaviest games during that time at around almost a MB. So I think Mario was around 7 to 8 KB. I think, I don't exactly remember.
Seven
Because
to
Doom,
okay, 7 to 8 KB is almost equal to about 20 tweets or less. Yeah, about 20 to 30 tweets.
Yeah.
Right. So in 30 tweets, you think we can code the entire Super Mario game?
well, it, like,
Just
if
do it.
I'm just thinking about it. So,
It was
so
31 KB, 31 KB. It was all written in like 8-bit commands. So it was
yes,
written.
so it's essentially instructions rather than coding itself, rather, I would say.
So today when we have to develop things, we install 103 KB of the framework itself, whereas the entire game was like 1/3 of its size way back, right? So that's questionable. But anyway,
But that's the thing, you see, we are modular. So, that within the game, for example, with modern games, for example, you could always push out a new update, you can always modularize the game. Everything
yes,
is modular.
yes.
So similarly, our code is also, we always put in new builds and so on. Everything is modular. So that is always, hampers the size, obviously.
Oh,
All right. Cool.
all right. So on the same lines, we can start, talking about Angular as a framework, because whatever counterparts we see, and while developing a particular web app, we always, have a few bits of pieces like we need to solve, like what do we go ahead with, and what team size we are going ahead with, what kind of packages we are going to use, what kind of scenarios we are going to solve. So in those all of those questions, actually give us an answer, to say what kind of technology is best to use. So when we talk about Angular, I mean, it's more of a framework than a library. So I guess we can kickstart this one now.
Who has all of you have worked with Angular here in the call?
Yeah.
I have.
Okay. Okay. Then I think that's a good question, a good point of discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So essentially, framework provides all of the basic features that one might instantly require. So, for example, if you are already sure that a project is not a single page application, requires a lot of routing, maybe even requiring multiple role authentication, role guards. So Angular provides all of that out of box. So kickstarting a project with certain features is much more easier, I would say, in Angular, because of a lot of features that are on the go, which is a benefit of the framework. A lot of things are shipped to you ready to use.
Yeah. So that's again, I don't want to make it Angular versus React discussion, but again, that's the problem what we face in React, and that's I mean, every single React project has a different architecture, which is
Exactly.
a huge problem. And if we use something like Angular, then I think that solves a much bigger problem. And I think we should have a bit more adoption at GeekyAnts of AngularJS. In,
Exactly.
Well, another
when we are
a
working,
big advantage of framework is uniformity. Always. So,
yes,
for example, whenever a person is transitioning to one project to another, you always know that the code is written in a certain format. Every single component has always got 4 files. A test file, a template file, component file, maybe a module file if it's a module, and so on. So everything is a very organized. Even the file, from the file structure to everything, is always provided by the framework. And
yeah,
on top of that, you always have the Angular CLI. One of the most important things
Exactly.
of Angular.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it absolutely provides all of the features that you require. So for example, you want a new component, just ng add CLI, ng add component name. You require a service, you just add a service. So it puts a lot of bootstrapping of the boilerplate code is no longer needed. You just write a command, you have got a ready component ready to go for you.
right.
Yeah, also recently there's a plugin in VS Code which we can use to generate the components by giving the inputs in a form, and it will code the command for us and run it in the terminal. So if we need to set some flags during our terminal commands, and the form will take care of that only. So we can just inject a service worker for PWA support easily from that form, or we can create some component of services with some initial flags from that plugin itself only.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly. The CLI commands that we have, like ng create project or ng add this, ng do this, all of those are provided with that particular VS Code plugin. So it's like you don't have to reach through terminal anymore, and you can do all of the stuff from there. And I mean, CLI is like a bliss. It has added everything in there, whatever library, whatever thing you want. They have given a command to you to get to that structure and add that particular package in the app in the same way that everyone would do. So this becomes super easy, and you don't have to focus upon configurations much more. You have to just focus upon the code logic and proceed from there.
So it's more of focusing on solving the problem rather than focusing on JavaScript, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But since this is a GD, I would have counterpoints. Because see, frameworks are good, but frameworks come with a lot of these frameworks come with a lot of rules and
They
say
bound
a
you.
pattern and files and folders. So with these, you like process curbs creativity, right? And that is what happens. Like if you love to explore, then the exploration is a bit less here. You can tweak things, you can modify things, obviously, but it's always good to learn how things are working internally, which people don't usually do when they are using a framework. So I would suggest do both the things. I mean, so like when you are working on a project, it's good not to focus on the framework or the internals of the framework, but also understand how things are built inside out, and have that bandwidth of creativity somewhere so that you can build something like better than, or fork Angular and build something on top of that. So with React, it's really easy. Like you can tweak things, and there's a lot of opportunity to contribute to it. But again, the JavaScript fatigue comes in with React and low-level non-framework libraries, right? So yeah, both the things are good. Choose your pain, I would say.
Well, Angular also has the ability to add libraries you require. So it just provides basic features. But if you want to have even more extra features, let's say you want to have some image manipulation or some animation library. So if you want, you can just add in the P5JS, because at the end of the day, Angular is JS. All of the code is compiled into JS. So as long as you have the typings file for the TypeScript and the library, you can just use it into Angular ready.
Yeah.
So that is never a big issue, that if you don't like the feature that is out of the box from the framework, then you can just opt out of it.
Yeah,
You always
exactly.
have an option.
And as Sanket mentioned, that we, in order to opt out of it and do it manually, you should know how to do it. So if you have started with Angular and you have not actually seen how the navigation works, how would you throw away Angular navigation package and do it yourself? So
Actually, regarding that, there is actually Angular has also made that easier. So, one of the biggest reason they have managed to reduce that bundle size is by adding the ability of tree shakeable. So
yeah,
essentially, Angular allows you to, like the compiler, when you are compiling the code from TypeScript to JS. So essentially, it allows you to tree shakeable. So what tree shakeable means is that remove everything that is not needed, any instruction that is unused, and just put only the instructions that are required. So for example, let's say you have not used the Rx library at all, let's say, for example.
yeah,
So Angular can choose to not at all even include it into the final bundle, so reducing the bundle size.
yeah,
Similarly, a lot of imports, for example, let's say, if you are writing a very bad code, you have imported a lot of things but never used them. So in React, you would be getting warnings, that please remove these and so on. In Angular, during the final bit, it would just straight up remove those. It doesn't care about it, because they are not used. Remove them.
yeah.
And
But
that is one of the big things that they have added in Angular 9.
yeah, but still you have to write good code for that. The tree shakeable thing that you're talking about, it actually it was there in AOT earlier as well. So while shipping the build, we have these two properties which we can use, like just in time compilation or ahead of time compilation. So earlier also in Angular versions, of course, I'm talking about past the second version, we had this tree shakeable feature in there, but in IV they have improved it a lot. and still, like Abhinav mentioned, that it removes all of the libraries that are unused and everything. We still have to write it in a proper way in order to get it, I mean, be make it available for tree shakeability. Example, I guess I can give of, I mean, we'll talk about dependency injection as well as we move on, but it's just an example. Like, for example, we are using a service for data communication between components. Now that service can be injected anywhere. Like, you can inject it in the root level, so that all of the components use them, or you can inject it at a, a parent level where only the child components are using it. So there are some services which are not really needed in other components, right? So that makes your bundle size even heavier if you import those kind of services which are not needed everywhere in the, in the root component or maybe somewhere else. And also it causes a, I mean, leaves behind a loophole where, multiple instances of that services can be shared if you are having those services injected at various levels where you don't even need them. So I mean, the new version that we have actually provides a way to, add that particular service as a provider, and not in the module level but at the component level. So because a module in the Angular can have like a lot of components. Like, you have created a module which is to be reused everywhere. It has 10 components, very small components, but there is a service which is used in only two of them, and it is not used in the rest of the, eight components in that particular module. So generally we provide that service at the module level to, make that service available for all the components in the module. But you can provide that particular service at the component level, and then while, compilation, the IV engine will take care of it. If it is not used in that particular component, then it will shake it out. But if it is provided at the module level, it does not happen. Even IV cannot do that because it doesn't know actually in which component out of that module it is needed or not needed. So there are a few things that we have to, take care while writing the code as well. But obviously, while using Angular, these are a lot of things, which are taken care on its own. But we need to know how to. I mean, Angular is a wonderful thing if we know how to leverage its properties and things in a right fashion.
Okay, I have a question. So
Yeah.
tree shape is a feature of bundlers, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
not tied to Angular. Is it tied
Exactly.
to Angular?
No, no, no.
No.
The thing is that the engine that we are using for compilation, the Angular compiler that we are using,
Okay.
they have included tree checkability into this while
Okay.
compiling.
Their compiler, and then it goes to the JS bundler.
Exactly. So everything is done at the time of compilation. When they actually send it in the the browser compiler, there they don't do anything.
Because we are also using tree shaking, and
Yeah.
it's at JS level. I mean, without Webpack 4 came up with tree shaking,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yes.
We are using it outside Angular, so I'm not sure like how it is related to Angular. We are saying like it's a part of the Angular compiler, right?
Yeah, actually, for making this build, Angular also uses Webpack internally. They do not provide the Webpack configuration file out of out to the person to to tweak or anything. They use it highly internally. So I guess the compiler that they have built, they have actually used those things to provide the tree capability.
Okay, makes sense.
And also, I mean, to help that thing, I guess, in the IV compiler there was one more thing. I don't remember exactly. They call it as like a concept of an incremental DOM. Is anyone
Yes.
aware of that?
Yes, incremental DOM. So incremental DOM is similar to, let's say, you could compare it something like a waterfall. So it essentially follows a top-down approach. So let's say data has been changed at a particular component, let's say in a parent component. So the data change is now propagated to every single child component underneath it. So it traces the data change. So for example, let's say a parent component has got 3 child components. That data change is related to only that particular child. So it then starts tracing that DOM through and through. And till finally it reaches to the point, which particular node that needs to be removed. So it only decrements or increments that node. So for example, let's say a node that is needed to be removed due to the data change, it removes it. And then again, it increments it back. So that is the reason it's called as an incremental DOM, because it does steps in a step-by-step basis in a top-down format. So at the end, it either increments or decrements on the basis of the change required. So it does not do any sort of comparison or anything. It just follows the data change that is needed. So it just propagates the data change to the child components, and whichever child components are affected by it, then it checks for the particular node within that child component that needs to be modified,
Nice, nice.
rather than performing any sort of comparisons or anything.
Yeah, exactly. I guess earlier than this, I mean earlier than the IV engine that is proposed, I guess it was done in Angular using the change detection tree that we have. Similar process was followed, but they have even gone a step ahead with using this incremental DOM concept and using instruction instead of having a specific component for each of the component to I mean check for changes and do it make it happen in the UI. Anyone else? I mean, only Abhinav and me are speaking, and Sanket obviously. Anyone else inputs into this? Anyone has tried this or read about it or share their experience of Angular?
Yeah, so I was also waiting for the next topic, which is that data binding. I was going through that the most important factor, that why we should go with Angular, why not React and other view libraries which we have. So the most important factor which I received, that was the data binding thing. So most of the articles, what they mentioned is that this is one of the important factor which reduces your code size somehow. Because if we are talking about React, in React you need to deal with it manually. You need to use some third party solution like Redux if you are going to manage the state, if you are going to share that particular data and those things. So this is somehow it is coming with such feature which is inbuilt in Angular. So yeah, so this is how I was just going through that why we should opt it.
Use RxJS. I mean, even on its website, Angular really promotes to use RxJS, and RxJS as a library. If anyone has worked with it, I guess it is a plethora of operations that we can do. I mean, a lot of possibilities that is possible from there. And I mean, all of these listeners and everything, we can pass observable streams and do whatnot using those. So I would say, I mean, it is a heavy one, so we should stick to using only those specific libraries that we want out of RxJS and not import the complete library altogether. It will hugely impact the bundle size that we started with. But yeah, it is a good thing to use.
Great. I was just checking the IV engine. I was just going through one of the Medium articles, and looks like the incremental DOM is very much inspired from a
But
combination. Just a second. I'm getting a call. You guys can carry on.
okay, no issues. So I guess moving on, the concept of I guess data binding has been discussed there. So what about testing? Like how can we do testing in Angular? So anyone who wants to add inputs onto this? Maybe Pranjal, I actually did some kind of testing into the app that you were creating, right? Using Jasmine and
Yes, Karma.
yeah,
Yeah,
Karma. That
actually, Angular internally provides a Karma framework for testing, and we can use Jasmine APIs to write our test cases in that. So it has a huge set of assert operations which we can perform. Also, Angular's when we do some testing, there is some problem of mocking the data. So Angular provides HTTP testing module for mocking the HTTP request. So it makes the testing part easier. We can do unit testing of each of the APIs and mock the data from the HTTP testing modules methods easily. And also this makes assertion easier. So we know what we are mocking.
Also, Angular does come out, if you're using the CLI, it also automatically adds the testing files, the required basic testing setup for the file components and services as well in the .test files. So, so it also provides the jest framework for that. So for the front end only. So that can be used very easily with Angular because it's already set up by default. If you're using the CLI, that is.
nice,
Yes,
nice.
exactly. The most important factor I would like to mention, Manav, that when we started working with Angular as a fresher, or we can say when we started as a newbie, so what we found that by using that CLI, it is automatically generating the test files. Okay, so this is promoting that you need to write all the unit test cases for each and every component. So it is making our life more easier. It is guiding us towards that way, that whatever you are developing, write test cases for it.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. It gives a boiler out of the box so that you can start with your testing and handle all of the use cases that you have.
Yes.
Anything
Yeah.
to add, Abhinav? Anything to add?
No, nothing. This.
Okay. So I guess we can move on to the language part. So now uh, Angular, when it was actually, I guess, came when it came, the Angular 2 version, when it came to the market, it was really like promoting the use of TypeScript. I mean, it is actually like uh, complete TypeScript support. So,
Yes.
anything onto that?
Actually, TypeScript has now become a very much an important thing with
Exactly.
Angular, and also a lot of other language people are also looking at TypeScript as an alternative to JS, because TypeScript provides a lot of testing, typing, and so on, that that doesn't need to be worried by the particular library that you are using or anything. So even in fact, even in React, these days you are using TypeScript as well in that. So, for example,
Exactly.
in React, normally if you're using in JSX, you would be writing prop types for prop and checking types and so on. So, TypeScript kind of elevates all of that issue. Plus, TypeScript also has a very specific advantage over JS, is that it is actually has got all of the OOP principles into it, object-oriented programming principles into it. Unlike JS, JS, even though it uses object, it does not completely use those principles to its full potential, which TypeScript
Exactly.
does actually. So that is one of the big difference between when you're comparing the TypeScript and JavaScript. And TypeScript is also kind of easier to learn if you have worked on type of languages like C, C++, where you are very much accustomed
Right,
to a
right.
form of
So,
typing.
so for those developers, it becomes easy to code in Angular 2 plus versions, because they see almost exactly the same type of coding practices there. You define, I mean, write everything in a typed fashion.
Yes. And
So
also,
that
it also promotes what you call as a healthy coding. So, you always remember to do typing. You shouldn't reuse variables that shouldn't be used. For example, you don't use the same variable which you're using for storing data and then again use it as a counter. This is a very bad coding practice, but it does happen. If a person is not paying attention. So, TypeScript kind of helps to elevate all of those issues. To not mix
yeah, yeah,
types into it.
exactly. We
This
can
is a very
always use
small issue
linter.
which people don't realize till they actually end up doing it. They end
Yeah,
up writing the whole code and they just realize, oh my god, did I actually write this code? Is this viable? If any bugs arise, will we be able to fix it? These kind of issues are kind of elevated by the TypeScript.
yeah, exactly. And we can always use linter with that, which will
Yes.
save you even more. Nice, nice, nice. What about PWS? I mean, like right now in the market, what I mean, we talk about cross-platform apps. We talk about like React Native, where we are building mobile apps for both iOS and Android. But PWS shook the market a long way, and a lot of a lot of people now focus upon creating a single code base that can be used both as a web app and a mobile app, irrespective of the platform you run onto it. So is it possible with Angular? How are we doing with Angular using PWS?
So actually, regarding PWA, Angular has been doing PWA since Angular 5. Actually, it's pretty much an old concept, but
Nice.
Angular has also added out-of-the-box CLI support for it as well. So
Exactly.
similarly, you have the ng-add command. So ng-add has also now they have added the functionality for service workers to be added using it. So it adds all of the basic service worker functionality to the particular project. So regarding, and also creates your regarded config JSON files, ngcw, which is called. So that includes all of the caching and settings, that is required for the PWS that are needed. So so it provides out of the box functionality. So you just continue as usual, just add the PWA, set up the config file, and you're almost ready with creating a PWA. There is
What,
no
what
sort of
about
conversion.
service workers for caching the files for offline support? How does that get managed?
That is managed in the ngcw file. You have got the caching options, how you want to cache, when do you want to update the files, how is the user supposed to be notified, or for example, let's say you want to update the user using a refresh. So all of those settings are predetermined in the ngcw, and you just need to go through what are the features that you require. So let's say you want to publish a build, and whenever the user refreshes the page, you can
Yeah.
just add a notification and add a support for that. And
Yeah.
all of that can be done in as simple as a JSON file. In
I
JSON
guess
file, you
I
just add
yeah.
update cache on refresh, and such flags are present. You just update those flags, with however you require.
Exactly, exactly. So I guess all of these configurations, the manifest files, the configuration files, the service worker, I guess all of these things in Angular are managed by the simple configuration command of the CLI, that just you add CLI, and all of these things are done and given to you, so that you can work onto that. Now only focus on the various service workers logic that you want to implement. Just add the configurations, which particular API request you want to cache, which particular assets you want to cache, and just forget about the configurations of how it is doing. But obviously it's a risky thing to not understand how it is actually providing those supports. But yeah, it makes life a lot easier.
There is only one big difference, when you're doing a PWA using Angular, is that generally when you're writing a standard Angular code, that you are testing it using ngserve and so on. But
Yeah.
you cannot do ngserve for PWA. You need to require a separate HTTP server. I know
Exactly.
it's obvious, but it is kind of something that needs to be kept in mind while developing a PWA. Is that you need to create a separate HTTP server which will serve for your PWA. You cannot use the standard ng serve that is provided out of box by Angular. That is kind of important point. Whenever you are developing PWA, a lot of people make this mistake. They just create a PWA and then just continue using ng serve, and they don't realize why their code is not getting updated. They do not understand that part. And much later on, when they realize that they were supposed to use it HTTP separate HTTP server for that. So that is something of a very important point that needs to be known before working with PWS in Angular.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone has anything to add into that?
That is actually the basic concept of PWA, how PWA works. It just, whenever it gets connected to the internet, it fetches the data from the server and compares the file access. If there's a difference, then it only tells the user that there's a change in the data, means there's an update available and you can update it. So, and in ng serve we use, and also with React, what we do whenever we are doing some changes, so because of hot reload, the change gets reflected immediately. So PWA will not be able to listen for the changes.
Yes.
This is the pre-working of PW service workers, so that need to be considered while working with
Yes.
PWAs.
Service workers essentially work on the format that every time a build is sent to the user's computer, it gets cached
Yes,
and
yes,
always has a hash. So
yes,
whenever it gets internet connectivity, it compares that hash. So if the hash matches, which means that the cache does not need to be updated. But let's say if the
yes.
cache does not match, at that point it means that the user needs to update the
Update,
build.
yes,
So at that point, you can also add functionality. You can add a notification that please refresh for updated build and so on. Or you can also do it automatically. But people prefer not to do that, because of issues. Like
yes, yes.
sometimes there
That's
might be
that's what I'm saying.
persisting data. You might want to persist some data. So you would want to know the user that refreshing might cause some issues. Regarding that. So that's why a lot of people use notifications and such for it.
Yes.
Nice, nice, nice. And anyone else? Anything to add? Jadeep? Anything?
Yeah, I was going through that how we can achieve that PWA in the latest one, and I found the same thing which Abhinav just now mentioned, that by using CLI we can just achieve it. So the pretty interesting thing is we do have option to cache specific folders. So this is something like which we can use it in practical environment in any of the project which we are going to develop or which we are working on. So by doing this, that there are possibility that if we have some static files which is going to be changed time to time, so we, if we don't want to cache it, just keep it out of from that configuration, that ngsw config.json file. So yeah, these are the things which is really very useful to all of us.
Like a very basic example of this, where you wouldn't want to cache certain files. Let's say you want to allow user to customize how their web page looks. Let's say you
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to allow user to
Yeah.
completely personalized page, where they have got their own colors of their app. Everything is separate. So in that case, essentially, what you're doing is allowing user to manipulate their CSS files. So in that case, you can just remove those CSS files that need to be cached, and keep it out of it, so that it can be changed every time. So that there are a lot of features linked to this, that where you can no longer you don't need to cache those files. You can allow a lot of features for the users to use. So if a customizable portal and so on, where you are moving stuff up and down, customization and such, and it's very useful for this.
Nice.
Exactly.
Correct, correct. Yeah. Okay. So moving on, I guess we already discussed about how change detection actually works in Angular, and the concept of dependency injection. Does anyone in here want to discuss over those points, or shall we move ahead? Anyone who needs to gain some more information onto that, how actually the change detection works, and what kind of dependency injection we use to communicate between various components, right, modular code and all those kind of stuff. So if anyone wants to add something, that please go ahead.
So Angular uses dependency injection through at the rate injectable. So so for example, you have got modules in Angular. So essentially, whenever you're creating anything, so you might be either generating a component or a module. So within a module, you have got providers. So let's say you want for data transfer. So let's say you want to do data transfer between two completely separate component. Which cannot be attributed connected using child parent child relationship. So so in that case you might want to inject a service which allows those interactions to be done. So those all can be done using modules and at the rate injectable. So whenever you're generating a class in Angular, everything is obviously in a form of a class. But if you were to declare a class and at the rate injectable, you can declare it essentially as a service. So that service can then be provided into the providers of a module, and within that module, all of the components under that module are capable of accessing those services. So this essentially allows you to inject data from another component into this. So dependency injection. So
Exactly.
that can be done as simple as by adding an at the rate injectable decorator on top of a class. And you've also got a lot of options, like let's say provided in, which allows you to specifically choose the instance. For example, provided in root means that you're going to use the root instance of this service that is going to be used in it. So if you are using a lot of same service is being used in a lot of components, and you want to specify that this shouldn't use it in that way, you can use those functionalities as well. A lot of options are available if you want to browse it.
Exactly. And anyone else, Ishita, you want to add something? You're talking on mute, I guess.
Yeah, recently, like I would like to talk about modularity. Uh, recently, the project I'm working on, like to call any services we are doing from the child component. So it was done in the whole project, it was called from the child component. So which we would need to move everything in the parent component, and then only using the output and input we are communicating.
Yeah, decorators, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, so yeah, like we are doing that throughout the code, and moving the code, all the code in parent code. So this is only like for child and parent, not for no, unrelated component.
Yes, at the
Exactly.
rate input and at the rate output work only in the form of parent-child. So at the rate
Yes.
input allows you to interact between data from parent to child. So essentially, parent inputs the data into child, and
Yeah.
at the rate output decorator is essentially you can form it as an event emitter, and which allows the data to be transferred from child to parent. Thus, child outputs that data to parent. So that's why that allows for parent-child data transfer. But if you want to do cross-component transfer where the parent-child relationship might not work, so in that cases you will be using observe services and observables, where you might be declaring observables inside a service, and then those observables are being watched or subscribed within those components.
Yeah, mostly for sibling communication. Like if the components are siblings to each other, or maybe lying very beneath in the tree, or maybe in a very far away leaf node. For those, you can use services and observables. But yeah, this is just the what do we say, the the most basic Angular way to communicate between components, and manage the flow of the data. But we can also use various state management libraries into this. uh, maybe RX store, or maybe even Redux, or those kind of stuff. That totally depends upon, how do we want to manage the data flow between components. And
Angular has also recently added something called as Angular Redux, which essentially
exactly,
makes the data transfer, very much same that, a person might be familiar with, React Redux, you with
exactly,
using map
exactly,
state to props and action
exactly.
type, dispatchers, and so on. So, there's obviously options, if you don't like that Angular way of working, there's always an option to, opt out of it and use something like state management libraries. That is always available to you.
Exactly,
So is
exactly.
that is this part of that official Angular repository, or this is something third party thing?
Third party.
Cool.
You always have the option. That is what I mentioned. Like a person has essentially created, because a lot of React developers, if they are transition into Angular, there is always an issue, where there is a learning curve where you have got two-way data binding and so on. So a lot of people have issues with going through those again. So they have got an option to directly just use state management. So that's what there's availability of options. If you don't like this, you have the option to do that as well.
Okay.
So that's
Exactly, exactly. Next up, I guess, was the IV engine that we already talked a lot about in the call. Uh, Anyone wants to add anything else, or maybe wishes to do a kind of a POC project to check all of the bundle sizes to see how it is it is performing, how much change in the performance it has brought in. So I guess we can discuss about those things. Anyone?
Actually, regarding Angular IB, the main point of Angular's team was that to make sure the bundle sizes are as low as possible for phones. Because one of the big issues that we are recently facing, like you might know about the meme of Google Chrome consuming a lot of RAM. So Angular kind of looked into it a bit deeper, So why is that an issue? Like, why is it required? Because previously also you used to have browsers. Previously also you used to have a lot of this, but we never faced a issue of this level, where there is a lot of RAM being used. So, they wanted to make that these websites to be, be as good as, usable. For systems, it's not really an issue, but for phones, where the RAM is being consumed by a lot of applications and, a lot. So there it ended up creating a performance deficiency for web pages, which is why, you might notice a lot of web page slowdown in phones. And also on top of that, you also need to remember that phones are also, mobile. So you might be always in a bad area where network might not be good and so on. So Angular looked into a lot of these. That is one of the main reasons why they wanted to reduce bundle size. Performance is a very key importance, but they wanted to make it accessible, because
Exactly.
with bad internet, it becomes almost impossible to access any heavy website. A website that has got a lot of CSS or anything, they become almost impossible to access in anything under 3G or internet. So Angular wanted to make sure that doesn't happen with it. So that is one of the main reason they went into cleaning up everything that they could to reduce
Exactly.
bundle size as much as they can. So that is one of the main driving force behind Ivy, is that make it mobile friendly, because Angular by default is not necessarily something that is to be used with phones, because with mobile you only have got a few support using Ionic framework, but
Yeah,
it doesn't create native. But let's say if you have a website that is being accessed by everybody, so you want to make it as easy as possible, on the go. So that is very important thing for mobile. So that's the reason, that is the main drive. It's not about perform just about performance, it's also about accessibility.
exactly, exactly. Nice, nice. Anyone else? Anything to add? All right. Let's talk about theme as well here. Like, what kind of themes Angular provides us, and what can be used for our development. Anyone? Pranjul?
Yeah, actually, the theme is like when we want to support, like most of the websites nowadays have day theme and a night theme. So theming is like placing the main logic of CSS at a single place so that we can just change there and it will reflect over the app. So we have some design systems available for that. Like Nebulars also provides some theming, and Material Design also provides theming when we can use that to theme our application in dark mode and various other applications, various other modes as well. So yeah, so some of the frameworks, some of the design libraries are available for that, for theming purposes.
Nice, nice, nice. Great. So I guess, and anything else, or else we can, conclude the discussion. Anyone wants to add anything out of the blue?
Yeah, I
Mm,
would like to know that we were talking about the bundle size. So, do we have any third-party solution or any option or any approach by which we can reduce it? The
for Angular,
default version which we were talking about.
Reduce it even
uh,
more. Actually, IV is doing that for you.
Okay.
all of
Okay.
those
So,
are
but
handled
Also, we need
internally.
to
All of those are actually handled at the time of compilation. So with Angular,
Mhm.
you always create a build because you need to transpile the TypeScript into JS. That's one of the main reasons you need to create a build when it comes to Angular, because browsers don't run on TypeScript. Browsers run on the JS. So ES 2015, ES 2016, and so on. So that's why. So during that compilation time is when Angular looks into it. So all of the tree shakeability and all of those things are done during that time. So when it is transpiling, it just essentially checks that if this code is required or not, is this being used or not. If it is being used, if it is being referenced, then it will proceed to add it. If it looks at it like there is no longer any purpose to having this in it, then it automatically removes those. That is the tree shakeable. Just shake off anything that is not needed. So
also
that
make
is how
use
you.
of
Okay.
lazy loading. Actually, lazy loading is the key feature for
That's
modular bundle sizes. So we only load a module if required via lazy loading, and
Yeah.
try reduce the entry point of the your application entry bundle of your application as much as possible by using lazy loading in that bundles. Like let's say we have an application which first have authentication, then only we land to a dashboard. So for we only need the authentication part. We only need
For
the authentication
initial.
module in the entry bundle or in the entry file. Other we can use
Exactly.
lazy loading for that, for loading other modules.
Exactly.
Yes, as they enter, they can bring in the next modules that are needed to be accessed by the
Exactly.
users.
And Angular, I guess, provides a very nice way to do that. It allows both eagerly loaded and lazy loaded modules. I guess it has a nice concept of load children, which provides us the capability to do that out of the box.
Generally, Angular provides all of these. These are all separate actions, but Angular has combined all of them into the ng build hyphen prod. So
Exactly.
whenever you do prod, it automatically does disable caching if needed. It does clean up cache and lazy loading, so on. All of these features, are kind of built in into the ng build command with different options. And there is a universal option to activate all of these together in the form of the hyphen prod option.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's it.
And I guess the hyphen prod option inherently works on AOT.
Yes,
Nice.
AOT and so on.
So I guess, I mean, this is a nice way to conclude it. That I mean, anyone who knows the benefits of Angular and knows how to actually use them, leverage them to create beautiful apps. I guess for those, Angular is a very nice framework and a tool to fastly build those things. So,
Yes. And also recently, a lot of the times the people say that, Angular has got a very difficult learning curve.
yeah,
But that is no longer so, because, that was back during the Angular 1 days, where you are
exactly,
writing a lot of a lot of code, where you need to think. But in Angular,
exactly,
from Angular 2 onwards, to be honest, I felt that, the learning curve has reduced. So, the code is
exactly,
very much polished. So, you have got the template file where, you have got the HTML. You just write your HTML code, any CSS, anything that needs to be, you add it there. You write the processing file, which processes any of the data that comes to it and so on. What needs to be
exactly,
displayed, what needs to be processed, write it in the component main file, and then just
exactly,
pass it into it. And Angular kind of does it very easily. Or the only thing, the part where the learning curve comes in is in the form of modules, where you need to provide the providers components, you need to import the components and so on. But so Angular's kind of reduced the learning curve a lot of by a lot, to be honest. When
exactly,
you come into it, once you go understand, template is the what is the processing file, and how to use a module. So how to use a routing module, how to use a standard module. It becomes very easy to use it. So the
exactly.
learning curve has significantly reduced. And it's kind of very good way to start using Angular. So and you can make a single page application very fast. Yeah, creating a single page application is almost instant nowadays. You have just got in ng containers, you've got all of this.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, also Angular.
yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, also Angular manages CSS very beautifully. If we go with React, we need to make sure that if we have decided a class name and what it does in React, it loads all the CSS in a single at global level. So which can mess other part of your application if you don't write proper class names followed by the components and all. So with Angular, with the concept of shadow root and ngdip nghost, we can just
Correct.
easily encapsulate the CSS of a single component into that only.
It will not mess up the other things. Exactly. And I guess it is managed internally as well. Whenever whenever we generate a new component, we have a CSS file attached with it. I guess internally it manages this concept. Whenever you write CSS in that particular file, it always binds it to that particular component using the ng host and ngd properties internally.
Yes.
Still, I don't know like why always React is compared with Angular. That it's easier to learn React compared to Angular.
No, actually, I guess if you compare the learning curve, I guess I would say that totally depends upon how do you how what all do you consider in that learning curve. Is it like to know how to build the app, or know like what would I say? No, each and every aspect of it. So
Oh,
if you are to go much deeper into all of the concepts, like how does the routing works, how does the http calls work, how does the component communication work, what is the change detection that is into place. So if you bring all of those into the learning curve, then obviously it becomes super complex. But
mm,
in React, it's like an open book. It's everything out there to learn. You can scavenge as much as possible and learn everything. But in Angular, if you are a developer and you want to start coding and want to build apps with minimal kind of knowledge, I mean, this is the way to go. You just need to follow the schematics of this, and you need to know what actually it does for the modularity, and you're good to go. But
mm,
that totally depends upon person to person. But I would say, uh, as Abhinav mentioned, if you consider the learning curve of what Angular was and what Angular is, I guess the learning curve has hugely it has steeped out.
mm,
It's really easy to grab Angular and actually get something live, start the app.
mm.
Anything else, anyone? Vasu, Shakti, Devang, you didn't spoke at all. Mohit?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about like, well, in Angular IV and all, most of the discussion points were on the terms of the end user, like the load times over there, the internet issues, and all of those things. Like,
Yeah,
I was just thinking about in terms of DevOps, in terms of CI and CD. Like,
yeah,
basically, if you want to build any application, if it's React or Angular or anything basically, uh, like these systems also require a set of resources, right? Like
exactly.
I have seen in my current project also, like the build times of the front end is going way more than 45 minutes to 1 hour. So like, is there any like build time advantage with Angular IDE?
Yes.
Because those
Ivy also provides that. Ivy also has the build time advantage as well. They have reduced that as well. I have not really covered that because generally build is one of the last things, and majority people tend to focus more on the performance of the build rather than the amount of time. But that has also been fixed with Angular, because Angular also used to have very long build times, especially if your system was a bit slow. So because of sometimes node causing issues, so that used to be a issue, a very big issue with Angular 4.5. But with Ivy they have also reduced that as well. Build times have been reduced significantly.
Yeah, that was the reason why I asked it, is because like those CI/CD pipelines are resources are really costly over there. Like it doesn't make sense for us to have a hugely time consuming pipeline running. either on a free service, either the whole pipeline, the whole other build pipelines are blocked, or if you want to scale it up, then it becomes more expensive to just do those kinds of automated builds. Like that was the one thing that just popped out of my head. Like a build taking 45 minutes to 1 hour will take up a lot of resources. It might block a lot of pipelines, or if we want to scale it up in terms of the resources, then it becomes heavily expensive for the developer to manage the project altogether.
Exactly.
Like it becomes a chore just to get our application onto the user.
Yeah.
Development is fine, like, everything is fine. Like it is a very structured framework with model view controller thing. Like in all the enterprises, I mean, everywhere you go, Angular has this one particular structure. So developer adaptiveness will be very quick when compared to React. Like all those things
Yeah.
are fine, but if we are stuck at the point where we are not able to deliver it to the user in a much more faster
Clean
way,
up.
like not
Yeah.
in terms of net uploads and all, but in terms of build and deployment. Like if the build is taking time and deployment is taking time, all these things that what we have saved time in like adaptiveness and all those things will basically go as a no-brainer if the build time is not that great.
Exactly. And
We eventually
yeah.
in the same time same like
Yeah, exactly. That is a very valid point. And as Abhinav is mentioning, even Angular had this issue, and there were instances where we used to increase the memory that is allocated to node to get to the build faster. And I guess in Ivy it has been reduced, as Abhinav has mentioned. So let's see. I mean, that only depends upon how big your project is, how modular your project is, how many files you have included into it, and a lot more things when we actually want to see how does that particular build process performs. So I guess that is something to be tested. Yeah. All right. And anything else? Anyone? Mohit, Devang, anything?
Yeah, yeah. I would like to ask something related to, as a React Native developer, I would just like to ask if anyone has worked on Angular native script. I have just gone through this. If anyone has worked, could we have a small discussion whether how to choose between these two, how far we are good at
Native.
native side of Angular?
Yeah, obviously anyone can continue from this, but Nativescript, I don't think that it was something given out with the Angular technology. I guess it's not backed by Google, but yes, Nativescript does exist to have a similar kind of way to build mobile apps, cross platform apps. But I don't think the community was not, I guess, that much good at that point of time when I tried it, and yeah, I mean, that was my experience with Nativescript. It didn't do well with me at when I tried that. So yeah, I guess anyone can continue from this.
So actually regarding mobile, so Angular does not necessarily do out of the box support for mobile. So Angular recommendation is for mobile to use the Ionic framework, and using the Cordova for deployments and such. So but obviously when Ionic framework works as a wrapper on the Angular code, rather, so it doesn't allow you to do a truly native app that you might be doing with React Native. So
Yeah.
that is something that is to be noted. That is one of the main reason the driving points of PWA is focus for Angular, is to be by allowing it to be a PWA app. So it kind of removes that issue of trying to be a truly native app, because it cannot be. So
Yeah.
that's the reason they use the whole Ionic framework as a wrapper on top of it.
Okay.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, and also
And
I would like to add some points. When I was doing some research on this native script, so as Manav just mentioned, that this is not backed by officially Google, but yes, it is being some of the core contributors are they are part of official Angular project. So when I was comparing, if we are going to compare Nativescript and React Native, so Nativescript its performance is a bit slow. So if you start developing a very basic Hello World app also, that will be very much complex and complicated for you. So if you are going to compare these two solutions, then definitely React Native is faster, and performance-wise, it's better than Nativescript. But the good part is, as we know that Angular is it's a complete framework. You will get a proper structure for development. So in that same way, you will get a proper file system where you can install all the required plugins, whatever is needed for your mobile application development in one package. So that is why native is better because of the file and folder structure. Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
Anyone?
Okay.
Anything else? Or shall we wrap up?
Yeah, we can, I
All
guess.
right. Okay. So stay safe, guys, and let's meet up again with more topics. All right. Stay safe. Yeah.
Okay. Same to you
Okay.
as well.
Yeah. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.